They all say, wow, even I can play this game.
そうです。当然僕は一野球ファンとしてね。
But, of course, being a baseball fan myself,
もっとリアルな野球もできたらいいなと思います。
I'm really hoping I'll get the chance to play a more realistic baseball game at some time on the Wii.
世界中にこの Wii スポーツを遊んでくれる人がたくさんいる。
But right now, I'm happy that millions of people around the world are enjoying Wii Sports right now
次の話。
with a different form of realism.
僕の最後のポイントです。
So now I'd like to go on to the final aspect of my personal vision,
でこの Wii を使ってちょっと説明したいと思います。
and that's called tenacity.
社内では私が一旦アイデアを思いつくとなかなか諦めない。
And I'll continue on with one more example
それは例えば
using the Wii to help explain.
昔
So some people at Nintendo say that when I have an idea, I can never let it go. And I admit this is true. And one example is a toy that Nintendo once manufactured called the Ultra Machine. It allowed you to play baseball in the house. A pitching arm would toss softballs to you, which you could hit with a plastic bat.
すごいビデオゲームにできるんじゃないかなと思ってたんですね。
And I always thought that this would make a fantastic video game.
でこの Wii リモコンがそれを可能にしてくれました。
And the Wii remote has made this possible.
でスタッフがこう野球の実験をして見せてくれた時にこれはいける。
So when my team came to me with their initial baseball experiment, I thought, yes, finally.
Wii ボールボールではこうカーブやスクリューボールも投げ分けられます。
But the thing about Wii Baseball that's better is that you can actually choose when you throw a curveball or a
非
screwball.
常に簡単なことです。
But all we've done is something that's very simple.
ただ、こういう技術が来るのを待ってた。
We just waited for the right technology to come along.
そして執念の例をもう一つ。
Here's one more example of tenacity.
これは日本で発売したファミコンのシステム。
This is the disk drive for the Japanese version of the NES.
もう20年前ですね。
This is about 20 years ago
で
that
こ
we
れで
released this.
人の顔を作って遊べたらいいなと
And
思
at
って
the time,
やり始めたんです。
I thought it would be a good idea
ちょっとビデオがあるので見
to
て
use a game machine to draw your own face or the faces of others. Let's take a quick look.
これ今目のパーツを選んで
So you can see here, we're picking choosing an eye shape.
こう本当は動かしてるんですけど見えないん
And
ですよ。
actually, you're also able to move the eye around. It's kind of hard to see in this video.
口を動かしています。
Here they're moving the mouth around.
で顔の輪郭に移って
You can also change the shape of the face.
動かしてはめる。
You can move that around and then put it on.
で髪型ですね。
You're changing the hairstyle here. It's a little bit easier to understand here.
動かして、
You see them move it around
まあこういう
and then put it on the face.
でこれをまあシナリオディスクと組み合わせて後でアニメーションしてある。
So this was coupled with something called a scenario disc that you would then use to animate these faces. And I thought this was a great idea,
けど僕の意見に賛成する人はあまりありませんでした。
but there weren't very many people who
どう
agreed
やっ
with
て
me.
ゲームにするのって言うんですね。
They asked me, how could this be a game?
ほとんどの人がそうです。でこれ以上進展なくですねペンディングになります。
So at that point, we pretty much stopped making progress on it, and the game was put on the pending list.
と思いながら
But
置いておきました。
I always thought it would be a very fun idea. Still, we left it behind.
でこのアイデアは休眠状態から覚めます。
But then it kind of awoke from hibernation after several years.
任天堂64の90年代ですね。64のディスク
In the 1990s, we released the N64 disc system in
これ
Japan.
を製品化したときに、まあ、ついにビデオをお見せしますけど、
So next I'll show you a video of how we turned this into an actual product, something called
で販売したものです。
Talent Studio that was sold only to the members of our RANnet network service.
でこのサービスのために山内さんがビデオに出演してくれます。
And in fact, Mr. Yamauchi, our former president, cooperated by creating a personal greeting for all the service members who
彼
bought
の挨
this.
拶が見られます。
Let's take a quick look.
この度は
At this time, I would like to thank everybody who has become a member of our RANnet service.
まあこうして服の着替えがねいっぱいできるとか、
Now, the key features of this program
だからショートムービー
were the
の
wide variety of clothing options and a built-in movie editor.
まあ前回のこの
Actually, at my last GDC keynote,
ダンスをして見せたのも
I showed a brief movie of me dancing that was based on this program.
任天堂内 ないでバカ受けだろうと思ったんですけども、
Of course, I believed that no one at Nintendo would be able to resist this idea. But somehow they
そして
did.
その後カードリーダーに出会います。
But then came the e-reader and the Game Boy Advance
でゲームボーイカメラと組み合わせてゲーム
and the Game Boy camera. And with those together,
これが最後の答えだと思
I
って
thought for sure we had the final answer.
これなら皆さん喜んでくれるだろうと思ったんですね。
I thought everybody would love it. They would know I created amazing entertainment. Let's take a look. Doesn't this look fun?
これ当時ステージデビューとなんですけども、
So at the time we called this stage debut.
3で見せました。
And I think some of you may have seen this at E3 in 2002.
拍手なんかお願いします。
Come on, clap your hands together.
こんなに上手に踊ると思わなかった。 岩さんがね、こんなに上手に踊れると思わなかった。
I bet you didn't know that Mr. Iwata could dance like that, huh?
山内さんは岩さんを次の作品に選んだ
In fact, I'm pretty sure that's why Mr. Yamauchi made him president.
すごいリズム感です。
They both got great
これはね
rhythm.
もう大ヒット間違いないと僕思ったんですね。でも
Now, to me, it was obvious that this was going to be a huge hit.
まあもちろん面白いけどね。
But inside Nintendo,
どうやっ
the
て
people who reviewed it still said, you know, sure, maybe this is funny, but
でそう言われるとしょうがない
you still can't make a game out of this. And I couldn't really refute what they had to say.
僕はまだくじけませんでした。
And I thought maybe I should give up, but
こ
still,
の Wii を作って
I was not defeated.
なんとか使える
So when Wii planning began, my team started thinking about how we could use this idea on the Wii.
そんなある日に、岩さんがやってきたんです。
But then one day, Mr. Iwata approached me
あの顔を作るアイデアはまだやってんの
with a little smirk on his face, and he asked me,
で、イエス。
are we still playing around with that face creation idea?
と彼は
And I said, well, yes, but we haven't been able to turn it into anything significant yet.
プログラムがあって
And at that point, he happily informed me
それがほとんど出来上
that
が
another team inside the building was working on something similar as part of a DS game, and that they were making good progress.
もうまさに僕が考えてたものなんですね。
And I said, this is exactly what I was thinking of.
で僕は早速こうチームのところに戻ってでお前らはもう
So
役に立たない。
I went back to my team and I said, you guys are useless.
でこの後しばらく僕はこの人たちと一緒に仕事をするんですよ。
So I told them I didn't need them anymore, and I went and worked with this other team for a few months.
でまあこういうことをするから非常にチームから僕は恨まれてると思います。
But of course, it's because I do things like this that my team often doesn't appreciate me all that
で
much.
実際僕がねこう怒ったのはやっぱりフラストレーションがあるん
But
ですよね
the fact that I'd gotten angry wasn't so much anger with them as it was
僕自
my
身
own
はこう
frustration.
20年も頑張ってきたのに
You know, we've been working on this idea for 20 years, but we'd never been able to turn it into much of anything.
でまあ大体長い間周りの評価は否定的なんですね。
You know, of course, at the time, early on, people had evaluated the project
こう
negatively.
いうアイデアというのはね本当にクリエイティブな人にとっては面白いかもしれない。
Their view was that, this idea would be very popular with creative people who were artists, people who could
世の
draw.
中の普通の人にとっては、苦痛
But
さえ
that
あるんですよ。
it was too complicated. It would only frustrate the masses who aren't used to using these types of tools and who aren't as creative.
このソフトどうして売るの？でどうやって？
And of course, others pointed out that, there was no way to make this into a game. There was no way to make it profitable.
プレイヤーが何か作るのはいいんですけどもね。
Players might enjoy the creation process,
そんなことのために人は
but everyone questioned how long people would spend on it when there were few ways to show off their creations.
でそれがこの Wii でなんか答えが出たんですね。
But finally, with the Wii, we managed to answer all of these questions.
でこの Mii を作って、これは Mii 自体でゲームになる必要はないんですね。
See, because creating these Miis didn't need to be a game in and of
家族のキャラク
themselves.
ターであったり
They could be stand-ins for actual players
ゲー
in
ムの中でい
games.
ろんな目的に使われたり、
They could be your family members' characters. They could serve many purposes in the
それ
games.
からリモートを使って
And of course, because of WeConnect 24, they could be shared between many players.
で でも本当にブレイクスルーというのは今日話した最初の企業の
But for me, the real breakthrough with this idea came when I reminded myself of that first corporate vision that I talked about today, the expanded audience. I realized that I had been seeing things exactly
やっぱり
backwards.
こう物事をうまく見られて逆に見てたっていうかね。つまり長年
You see, over the
ハードの進化
years,
に合わせて
by
どんどんこう
insisting that with every advance in
コーポレ
hardware,
ートのレベルを上げたり
that we also make the graphics more complex, the detail of the program more complex, the functionality more complex, it turned into less of a game and more of a utility.
結局普通の人が見たらなんか複雑なもんでやる気が起こらない
As we were making it, we ourselves were creating something that the average person would just look at and see as being too complicated.
ユーザーの数を減らしてたかも
We were actually reducing the number of people who would ever want to use it.
でこういう幅広い人に触ってもらえるようなものができたんですねでこれで全ての回答
But once we started to reconsider the program to be something inviting to the widest possible audience, all the riddles were solved. The editor is simple, the choices are limited,
交換はすごく簡単です
the exchanging of Miis is easy.
ねでついに僕の執念はなんかこう形になったなと思います
So my tenacity finally paid off.
で問題をこう僕は違った視点から見よう
But
と
it was only when I was willing to take the risk of looking at the problem from a different perspective.
で最初こう技術に沿って開発を進めてきたんですけども
So of course, pursuing the latest technology is one way
どっちかというとこうデザイナー自身がずっと追い求めてる
to
アイ
create
デア
something revolutionary.
それが全く
But
新しい
something really new
出会う
often is
瞬間に
born when a designer has a persistently held idea that they've had for a long time, and they wait long enough for new technology to come and make that dream come alive.
一生懸命作り上げてきた技術と全然違う
And this time around, my vision was transformed into something completely different from all those prototypes that we'd spent so much energy on.